Hello everybody. In this Python tutorial we're going to go over several different ways to calculate a product. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is import several extensions or modules, and we need to import NumPy, function tools, operator, and iter tools. Okay, so in our first example that will allow us to calculate a product, we're going to go ahead and use a for loop. So let's go ahead and type out the code and then we'll go over it. The first thing we did is we created a variable. We named this prod, short for product. We set this equal to 1, and this is a placeholder for our product. Okay, and we set this equal to 1 because if you set it equal to 0, this code won't work. Because when we start to multiply the numbers together, 0 times anything will give us back 0. So you want to go ahead and set this equal to 1 to start. Then we used a for loop to iterate through a list of numbers, in this case just 3 5s, so this will be 5 times 5 times 5. Then we used our product variable here, which we originally set to 1. We used this multiplication shortcut syntax, which creates a sort of running total for all of the numbers in this list multiplied together. And then finally we use a print to display the answer. So let's go ahead and select our code and run it. And you can see over here in the console, 5 times 5 times 5 gives us back 125. Now let's just go ahead and show you, if you set this original variable for the product to 0, and then you try and run this, you can see you get back 0. So we want to make sure that we set that to 1. And one more thing to note, this syntax here is the same thing as typing out product equals product times I. Okay? So let's go ahead and select this and run it, and we should get back the same answer we got before, which is 125. And we do. We're good to go. Let's go ahead and just change it back to the original. For our next example, we're going to create a function that we can call anytime we'd like that will help us to calculate a product. Okay, so we use the def reserved word to define our function. We create our function name. Inside our round brackets, we put a star and then numbers, and this will allow us to take any number of arguments that we would like. Then we created our syntax here, which is basically the same as our example above here. And finally, we return the numbers multiplied together, or the product. So let's go ahead and run our code, and then let's call our function. So let's just start out real simple and put in two numbers, 2 and 2. Let's hit return. We should get back 4, and we do. Let's try it again. Let's call our function again. This time let's put in a decimal, 0.5 and 100. We get back 50. That looks good. Let's call the function one more time. Let's put in 4 numbers. And we get back 48. That looks good. For our next example, we're going to calculate a product using the NumPy extension that we imported here. Okay, so in this example, we created our variable. Then we use our NumPy extension. Then we use a dot to access the product. And then inside the round brackets, we create a list using the square brackets, and we put in 4 numbers, 2, 3, 2, and 0.5. Then we used a print to display. So let's go ahead and select this and run it. And for this one, we should get back 6. And we do. We're good to go. For our next example, we're going to use the functools module, which we imported here. Okay, so we created our variable, variable2. We access our function tools module. You use a dot to access reduce. And then inside the round brackets, we define the type of operator we want to use. And in this case, we access the operator module, which we imported up here. A dot to access MUL, which is short for multiplication. And we put a comma. Then we created a list. And what this should do is it should apply this multiplication operator here to this list here. So let's go ahead and select our code and run it. And you can see over here in the console, we get back 44, which is 2 times 11 times 2. In our next example, we're going to use the function tools module again, but in this case, we're going to use a lambda. Okay, so we created our variable, variable3. We used the function tools module a dot to access reduce, and then inside the round brackets we use our lambda function. We defined our parameters or the arguments that this will take, and then a colon, and then here we define what we want to do with our arguments or how we want to return those values, which specifies multiplication. Then we put a comma in our list. So this lambda here will be applied to this list to multiply all the values together. Let's go ahead and select our code and run it. And you can see over here in the console, we get 88, which is 11 times 4, which is 44, times 2, which is 88. For our last example, we're going to create some code that will allow you to see the product for each step through the multiplication process. We're going to use the itertools module, the accumulate function, and the operator. So let's go ahead and type out the code. Okay, so we create our variable. Then we start out with a list, and this will allow us to display this in list form. Then inside the list round brackets, we use our itertools module, use a dot to access the accumulate function. Then inside the accumulate round brackets, we created our list with the numbers 2, 3, 2, 10, and 2. Then we put a comma, we access the operator module, then we use a dot to access the multiplication. Okay, so let's go ahead and select our code and run it. And you can see over here in the console, we have a running total of sorts that allows you to see the product through each step of the multiplication. So you can see here we started with 2, 3, 2, 10, and 2. So 2 times 3 is 6. Then the next number in our original list is 2. So you can see 6 times 2 is 12. So then the next number is 10, which is 12 times 10 is 120. Then the last number in our list is 2. So 120 times 2 is 240. Okay, so that's all we have for this Python tutorial on different ways to calculate a product. We will be doing many more Python tutorials in the near future. Join us for those, and we'll see you next time.